Hi, everyone. I'm Kimbyrleigha, and this is Kimbyrleigha Live, where I discuss current and ongoing true crime cases. And I will try to break down legal aspects in an easy to understand manner because I am brushing up on the law to prepare myself for my upcoming bar exam. Some of you already know this who have been here. I'm planning to sit for it next year in 2026. So it's a win win for us because it truly helps me to watch trials, to talk about these cases with all of you, and dive into the law. And by the way, if you are new here, I don't know how you found me, but I have a main true crime channel here on YouTube, as well as a true crime podcast with my husband. It's called Dark Livity. That's where this set is from. And those channels discuss solved cases in a narrative manner. If you like that kind of thing, you might want to check it out. But here, we will be talking about things that are currently unfolding. So, a lot different. If you want to know more about me, who I am, why you should listen to me, look below in the description box. Maybe you just like me, and that's fine. And you will find out about my education and my background because that is the lens in which I view the world. So I do want to thank everyone for being here. Let me know if you can even hear me because I just did the spiel and I forgot to ask, can you hear me? There's a little bit of a delay so that I can, make sure I'm doing everything right, or else I'll just cut that out later and we'll start from here and I'll edit the video. I did notice YouTube says when you edit the video afterward, which I haven't done yet, um, it will make our live chat go away because I haven't seen our live chat. So that was kind of weird. But let me know in the live chat if you can hear me, and then we can move on to what I would like to discuss today. I'm not feeling well, so there's that. Tomorrow you'll find out what I did today because I'm going to be posting a reel on Instagram. But wow, I guess I ate something bad from Venice. We went to Venice Beach, and that's the thing. I shouldn't do new things. I should stick to what I like and what I know. But let's get into the live today. I want to thank you all for coming out to my previous live streams. We have been having a great time, like friends, just talking about the Karen Reid retrial, not even taking a side, but being that 13th juror and just analyzing and asking questions. And y'all have really good questions. So, jumping into day 16, which was yesterday, right? I'm always one day behind right now as I learn how to do this better. But there were definitely some bombshells, in my opinion, especially with the medical examiner. But first, we have to go back to Maureen Hartnett. She was back on cross examination with Alessi, and the first order of business is debris. Yes, debris. We're back to the infamous taillight. So let's not delay because I only have an hour tonight. I'm really trying to do an hour. So let's jump right in and then I can answer some questions that are in the chat. Are you ready for this? Let's go.
Ms. Hartnett, you will recall discussion about the taillight from the Lexus that was discussed on both direct and cross-examination yesterday.
Yes.
Let me know if you can hear this.
And you recall the discussion with regard to the weather that was in existence on or about January 29th. I'm not going to go into it at all. I just want to sort of refresh and reorient to where we were on that topic. You recall that?
Yes.
And I am now going to reference specifically what you referred to yesterday, I believe, as the inner part of the taillight, sometimes
That
the
wasn't me.
inside of the taillight. Do I have that parlance correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So my question is, did you find any sand or salt or any other debris in the inside portion of that taillight?
No, I did not.
Okay, so that's all I wanted to play right there. The debris, because I don't know if you remember last time we were talking about, well, we'll get to it. So I feel like the word of the day is parlance. He said it a few times. Alessi's really funny. And I had to look it up because I was like, parlance. I kind of understand what it is. It's a way of speaking or using words, especially the way they're familiar to those in a particular job. So he's trying to speak her language. He's using her phrases and definitions and making sure that it makes sense. And I was thinking, should I try using it in a sentence for you? I guess in Judge Bev parlance, when she rules on an objection and it comes in, when she says, I'll allow it, that's her parlance, right? But to continue, Hartnett confirmed no sand, salt, or debris was found in the inside portion of the Lexus taillight. No biological testing was done, like blood, saliva, skin cells, on any of the taillight fragments from 34 Fairview. We also went over that in this day of trial. And also, what's interesting, I feel like that alone can show some reasonable doubt, right? Because could John's DNA been found on those or not? And would that even be relevant? So now we turn to John's clothing because this is why Alessi's asking about the debris. And that's what I was going to get to. I was going to talk about the clothing and you'll hear the relevance. Oh, am I messing with my headphones? Sorry about that. Can you still hear me? I don't know. I'm like, I don't even know. Let's go on to this.
Topics.
Wait, I think I muted it.
There was
Or wait, is it not playing? I think I muted it, guys. Oh my gosh, what did I do? See, this is why I can't be trusted. I feel like I accidentally did something with my headphones and I messed it up. Let's try one more time.
T-shirt.
No, I can't hear it. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to call my husband in here. Hold, please. Yeah, this is like my worst nightmare on live that it won't work. Let me try it one more time because I really don't understand why it wouldn't work.
A hoodie
I don't hear her.
of the decedent. Do you recall that?
You're not hearing her, right?
Yes, I do.
And are you okay with my parlance of
it is playing?
T-shirt,
Okay.
the yellow or orange T-shirt on the one hand, and then the gray hoodie sweatshirt? Is that an acceptable parlance for you?
Yes.
So with regard to those two items, if I could, Your Honor, have published what is already in evidence, Exhibit 151 and 150, and Mr. Wolk, if we could please put those side by side. Alrighty, so is it correct that what's on the left is the right sleeve of what we refer to as the hood?
I forgot that I wasn't going to go into all of the clothing and stuff like that. I know that I put that in my thumbnail. Somebody did ask last week or last live about the sleeve. And I was going to show a different picture of the sleeve that somebody online kind of lined up to his arm, which I thought was kind of interesting. And somebody asked me where something like that. Are we an unbiased channel? I don't know. Like, we all have biases, right? So it's like, as I'm listening to the evidence, I'm with the law. So I really don't I'm going with what I hear and see and observe. So I don't care if someone feels one you fall on because I feel like you can't really make a determination at this part because you haven't heard the defense's case. So we've only heard the prosecution's case. So it would be highly unfair to deem anything one way or the other because we haven't heard the whole trial, right? So the next part I wanted to go to, I didn't even mean to play all of that. I just wanted to get to the debris. So I apologize. But the debris was scraped from both that orange t-shirt and the gray hoodie that John O'Keefe was wearing, and they were taken off his body at the hospital. When the items were bagged and then removed at the crime lab, Hartnett combined the debris because the clothes were already commingled. She used the word commingled into a single evidence bag. So she couldn't separate it. It was impossible. No identification, categories were put together for this, or photos of the debris were taken. So she didn't take the debris out and put them in categories like plastic debris, sand, dirt. She didn't do that. So again, I think this is important because what if there was plastic from the taillight, or what if there wasn't? So again, this is just reasonable doubt, and I'm pointing it out every time. And then there was a question: why is the taillight so clean as opposed to the clothing? Well, the defense wanted to point out where the paper bag came from, because that's going to be important because I'm showing, you know, each one of their arguments, which I think is really interesting. So let's listen to that. Okay.
And let's keep it there for a moment, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Wolk, for you to zoom in. Ms. Hartnett, do you recognize this generally, and then I'm going to have it zoom in so you can read it, as an evidence bag?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Wolk, could you please zoom in, starting from the top, so that Ms. Hartnett can fairly read this. And if you could, Ms. Hartnett, just take a moment to read it, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, but I want you to have a fair opportunity to read it. Let me know when you're done.
Okay.
And if we can then scroll down, Mr. Wolk, so that Ms. Hartnett can fairly read the rest of what's on there.
It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Wolk, if you could just leave it where it is now. With Your Honor's permission, I don't see a need to keep the lights off. Can have that on,
Okay,
but if
that's
Ms.
great.
Hartnett
Lights
needs
on,
it,
please.
you'll just let us know. So, is this the evidence bag that the T-shirt and the hoodie were in when you received those items?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
You see the name of collected by someone there. Can you read who that states it was collected by?
Yes.
And state what that is.
It says TPR Proctor.
And are you able to conclude what the TPR stands for?
Generally, we use that to abbreviate trooper.
Right. So that is former Trooper Proctor that it says collected by, correct?
That is what's written on the bag, yes.
And the date of the collection, if we can just, Mr. Wolf, just.
Sorry if I was cutting in and out. That's actually YouTube. We're plugged in and everything, so it can't be my internet, so to speak, because we're like plugged into the wall. But if it does that, unfortunately, I have to restart it. I apologize. So what we're getting at here is Trooper Proctor. Again, the clothing was received in this brown paper bag. It was labeled with Trooper Proctor's name, dated January 29th, 2022. No surprise that Alessi is pointing this out. That Proctor, and I feel like I'm a broken record right now, but I told you, the defense is going to highlight this and continue to point this out. The disgraced former Trooper Proctor being involved in the investigation to undermine the integrity. So remember, that's the defense's case, that the investigation was shoddy, so we can't rely on it, and therefore equals reasonable doubt. Hartnett stated she had no knowledge of the chain of custody before those items arrived at the lab. She did not know if the debris came from an ambulance, the hospital, or somewhere else. And she acknowledged that proper forensic protocol does include gloves, bleach, lab coats, separating to avoid contamination, and none of that was done in this case, according to her. We all know how important chain of custody is. So I guess it is what it is, but there's that argument. I don't think we need to go on. We know why the defense is arguing that. And then there was something else because we're going to get to Brennan. Brennan comes back for redirect, and we're back to the good old red Solo cups and blood. Now, I feel like I did kind of laugh at this part. Just here, let's play it and you'll see. Maybe you'll see we have totally different sense of humor.
You mentioned that you had an opportunity to observe a paper bag that had red Solo cups in it,
Yes, that's correct.
and the red Solo cups had a coloring of red in the cups.
Yes.
You'd never seen blood preserved in cups like that before?
Objection, Your Honor.
To the form. Sustained.
Had you ever seen blood stored in cups like that before?
No.
Do you know the circumstances of storing that blood?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
When the blood was stored in the cups, do you know the circumstances?
Sorry, Mr. Brennan. Your Honor, objection. Can we have a sidebar, please? It's important.
Okay?
Sidebar. I just laughed because he was like, have you ever seen blood stored like this before? Of course not. Why would you store blood like that? I mean, we can all laugh at that. It's not funny. But just the fact that we're using red Solo cups, all I can think about is beer pong. It is what it is. But I just want to highlight he is trying to kind of say, listen, you know what the circumstances were around this decision? And Brennan was really hoping to emphasize they were busy, so strapped for time. They had to use these cups. But to be honest, I think it's kind of a bad excuse. And that's what I'll do in these videos. I'm just making observations. If I was sitting there as a juror, I kind of couldn't help but maybe roll my eyes because even if you watch CSI on TV, you're going to know that's not an adequate way to collect and preserve evidence. So I think all of us can agree that's like you're not making the point. I don't think there's any way to justify that, but that's just my opinion. So for the next little clip that I saved for you, and I just want to make sure I'm staying organized. Let's take this one down. We are going to be talking about I think this was the external parts of the Lexus. She examined them except the roof and found no scratches, dents, or hair anywhere except the right rear quarter panel. And that is the part where the taillight is located. So this bolsters Brennan's argument that Karen hit John with that portion of her car. So let's listen to that.
The roof of the vehicle.
Did you study all sides equally? Did you
I don't
spend
know why it's
time with
jumping
the
like that.
entire vehicle?
I believe I made an effort, yes, to look at the entire vehicle.
When you studied the back of the vehicle, not the right side or left side, the back, middle, did you find any hair?
I did not note any hair, no.
Did you find any scratches?
The only scratches I noted were ones that I had spoken of previously on the right.
When you looked at the left side of that Lexus, did you find any dents or scratches?
Nothing that I noted, no.
Did you find any hair on that side of the car?
Not that I noted, no.
Did you find any dents, scratches, or hair anywhere but on other than the right side quarter of that Lexus?
I did not note any. I also did not examine the interior of the vehicle.
I mean, we are talking about people from Boston. I feel like my dad sounds mad whenever I talk to him, like scared of him. And he'll just be like, hello. And I'll just be like, I don't know. It's the aggression. Oh, I'm sorry for this pause right here on her face. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean this. We're going to talk about the hoodie real fast. I'm trying to go through this so we can start talking and maybe answer some of your comments as well. I also need to read your name, Witter Sky, because I was rewatching my lives and I realized I don't usually say, Winter Sky said, do you notice how Brennan always sounds mad at his own witnesses on redirect? I never say that I'm reading a comment. So it sounds like I'm just continuously flowing in all these different thoughts. But let's listen to this. And I don't know why it's skipping like that. That's not me.
Close up. Do you remember what that's a picture of or a photograph of?
Yes.
What is it?
That is a tear that was on the right sleeve of the gray sweatshirt.
The threads coming from the side of that hole?
Yes.
Those threads, could you pull those threads and pull them out by hand if you wanted to?
Can you repeat that question?
If you pulled on those threads, could you pull thread from that hole if you wanted to?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I don't know. I didn't attempt to pull at them at all.
Did you examine them to see if they were woven or loose, those threads?
Yes.
Okay, and what were they?
They were loose. The fibers had started to separate up from the shirt. Separate and weave. I don't want to say they were separated from the shirt completely. The weave was starting to separate.
If we could have photograph 57.
Okay, somebody said, Brandy commented, jury got in trouble today for laughing about the Zolo cups. I kind of read that because I'm a day behind. And then when I go home at night and I'm watching the baby at night, I watch a trial. So I'm always one day behind. I did kind of peek in and notice and heard that. I mean, we're human, you know? I think all of us can agree that's a little bit funny, but it's not funny. Now, the fibers, they were loose, beginning to separate, but she didn't test them by pulling them or anything like that. I keep hitting the microphone with my chin. And I did think that this was smart of Brennan to zoom in on that sleeve because he's only showing one tear. There were many, as stated by someone last time in the chat, and they matched up with every parallel abrasion on John's arm. So they looked like I would say like claws. I know nobody wants to hear claws because the people who don't believe that it could be a claw or a bite mark are going to be like, no, I found this online. Is it relevant? Take it with a grain of salt. Somebody took John's injuries, you can see, and they lined them up. Maybe they did this in court last time. I don't remember seeing anything like this, but they lined them up to where the holes are in the shirt. I mean, it does look pretty accurate, right? I don't know. I feel like it does. Okay. I did want to see. AF said, this whole thing was botched. I don't think Karen did it, but I don't feel there's enough proof of what really happened to change anyone, sadly. To charge anyone? Yeah, charge anyone. Let's see. Any other questions? Natty said, they left to go get a leaf blower. Eye roll. I think people can roll their eyes at that as well. And well, Karen is innocent. That's okay. There are going to be people on the juror that are the same way. Imagine we are in a room together and we are all the jurors. We're not going to agree. Everyone has to come to one conclusion by talking to each other. Now, that might not happen in real life, and I understand that. But I just want to make this a safe place where people can discuss things, and I don't want us to argue, but it might happen. All right. So now we're back. We're back again with the solo cups. I don't know what I was going to point out about these. I kind of forget. So let me think for a second. I think this was evidence tampering, if I'm not mistaken. Let's play it.
Oh, you can take that down. You were asked about who had
That's why.
custody of items. You only have custody of items once you receive them, right?
Yes, that's correct.
If somebody had access to that rag and dipped it in those cups and then smeared it on the tail light, and you went and tested, would you potentially be able to find that red liquid on the tail light?
Objection, Your Honor.
It's sustained.
If strands of cloth were pulled from those clothing and placed in the taillight area, would you know when they were placed?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
When you get to a scene and you examine an area, if you don't see it firsthand, is there any way you can date when items are placed on an object?
I'm sorry, can you ask that one more time, please?
Sure. When you look at an area like a taillight, if you found blood or cloth or another item in that area, would you know when it was placed in that area?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I think there are really just too many variables to say either way.
I think that was a good answer because there are a lot of variables and you could see all the objections, and she is speculating. He was trying to say if red fluid from the solo cups, which is the blood, or the threads from the clothing could have been planted onto the taillight or elsewhere, could you tell? Well, I mean, that would be speculating, right? So that's why there were the objections. I also don't think that was a good argument for Brennan to me. It might have been better for the defense. And then briefly, Alessi came back to recross her about the cause of the hole in that hoodie, and she confirmed she did not analyze the cause of the hole, only documented the damage that she saw. So again, this is going towards the jury questioning all the possibilities. Car, something else. And remember the defense's strategy. They're going to emphasize lack of testing, the unclear chain of custody, possible contamination, evidence planting, and the prosecution is going to try to verify that the evidence, aligned with their theory and try to, I don't know, I think he's kind of struggling here in this particular questioning because, like I said, I feel like the other side could kind of, when he said, can you tell when that happened? That kind of goes, in my opinion, to the defense. Like, if it could have been planted, if it could have gotten there at any time, then it could have been planted. So that was weird. I don't know. But I really, really want to get into the medical examiner because the majority of the day we had, and I hope I'm going to say her name right, Dr. Irene Scorti-Bello. If I say that wrong, I apologize in advance. But she's a forensic pathologist and medical examiner, and she personally conducted John O'Keefe's autopsy. She's a pretty important witness, and she was called by the Commonwealth and people weren't sure whether she was going to be called at all. Because in the last trial, it was clear that she did not rule this death a homicide. As a matter of fact, spoiler alert, it was ruled undetermined. And there are 5 manners of death: natural, accidental, suicide, homicide, and undetermined. I don't think we need to go over all this or her schooling and credentials. She's definitely qualified. Nobody's questioning that. First, she's going to show a diagram. However, I noticed her clinical medical notes were not on them, they've been redacted. I do have a picture of the one with the notes, but you really don't need to see it because doctor's handwriting is so bad, you can't even tell. But let's just listen because she's going to explain everything. I don't know why it's being like that.
With the court's permission, Ms. Gilman, if you could put up the diagram, full body. If you could enlarge that a little more. Thank you very much. Could you explain this to us?
Yes, this is the diagram that we use during every autopsy. As you can see, we note the name of the decedent. Every case has its own number. In this case, it was 22-1697. And then we take note of, as I mentioned, during the external examination, physical characteristics such as hair, eyes, teeth. And then on this diagram, we would note any scars we see on the body, any tattoos we see on the body, any injuries we see on the body, and any therapeutic interventions. Those would be things that are sometimes done either by emergency medical personnel or at the hospital. Everything would be noted on this diagram.
Now, if you could take us through, I'm going to ask you, we'll go body part by body part, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to begin with Mr. O'Keefe's face, the front of his face. And
Yes.
if you could enlarge that, Ms. Gilman. Thank you very much. Did you notice any injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's face? And if so, could you, I think there's a pointer available for you, Doctor? If you could
Yes.
point out on the diagram what you observed.
So on the diagram, well, first of all, there was medical intervention on Mr. O'Keefe that included an endotracheal tube that had been placed to help him breathe. But once all the intervention, all the medical devices were removed, I observed on his right upper eyelid a 1 centimeter laceration. So as we're looking at the diagram, this is the right side and this is the left side. So on his right eyelid, there was a small laceration. I also observed abrasions on the anterior and the left aspect of the nose. So the nose would be here on the front and the left aspect. Abrasions are scrapes. Lacerations are tears in the skin. I should probably explain that. Then there was some bleeding and some swelling of the eyelids of both eyes.
So I don't think that I'm going to just say, I think could be disrespectful to show autopsy photos. They redacted all the markings on here. So I don't think they want that. And what family member wants their full autopsy of their family member? However, I do have the photo. I don't know if any of you have seen it from the last trial. There's a photo of the back of John O'Keefe's head. I also have the one of his face. But I do think it's important for at least me to tell you. So I am going to describe something to you because there's something I want to show you and tell you. Okay, so the back of his head is shaved in the area that was impacted. It's in that small area. It's like a round area. And then there's a wound. I think she stated that it was almost an inch long. It was significant in that when the scalp was pulled back, there was fractures in the base of the skull and around the area where the wound was located. In addition, there was damage to the brain and bleeding. So she preserved his brain after removal to be sent to a neuropathologist in Boston at a different crime lab so that they could examine it more extensively with her expertise, another doctor. So when you're looking at his injury, though, and you're looking at the back of the head, there's sort of a scrape mark, almost like a bruise, and then there's redness all around at the top of the wound. It looks like something that would happen if you impacted a hard surface or you were hit with something. You know how a cut bursts open? I don't know if you've ever been hit with something, but it kind of splits. So, yes, it can look like a cut, but it almost looks more like something that was hit, whether that's a fist, whether that's falling on the cement, or like the Commonwealth has said, ground that's frozen. It's the type of injury you would see from that type of impact. So I hope that just gives you a little bit of a perspective. And then the front on John's face, both of his eyes were puffed up. The left was more puffed up than the right. And I'm talking about upper eyelids, almost protruding and swollen and bluish purple in color. There was blood that was coming from the right eye and dripping down the side of his face. So at first glance, if you haven't had experience looking at autopsies or crime scene photos, I have many a times. I'm not a doctor, but I am in school, medical legal death investigation classes. So you might say, wow, this person got in a fight. They have two black eyes. However, people who do have experience with blunt force trauma, especially with a fall where you hit the back of your head and have fractures, you can present with black eyes, which is also known as raccoon eyes or the raccoon sign at autopsy. And this happens because the force of the impact, it ruptures the blood vessels within the skull. And that can lead to internal bleeding, and that collects in the eyes, and it causes dark bruising around the eyes, resembling a black eye. So I just want to put that out there. This presentation of John's face and his eyes in particular, it doesn't mean he was hit in the face, but it could have been that he was hit in the face. He has two black eyes. But it could also mean he was hit in the back of the head or punched in the back of his head or fell or hit by a car. I mean, there's so many things that could have caused impact to the back of the head. So I wanted to put that out there, but I also wanted to show you something that I thought was interesting. This right here, I hope it comes up. This right here is what I'm talking about. You can see that she's got, I mean, hers isn't puffy, so to speak. I'm showing it on the screen, but this is due to a head injury. I know it's just a little, I don't know what you want to call it, picture, but here's another one I found online from Impacts. But what I really wanted to show you was this. This website is actually really good. It's Paramedic Basics. If you just want to know, if you're just curious one night and you want to just go right through it, it's paramedicbasics.com.au. And if you scroll down, this is interesting. This is coup and counter coup, which means when one side gets hit, you know, your brain can come forward and cause another injury. We're not really looking at that, so to speak. And then where I wanted to go. So this will show you skull fracture. You can see the puffiness in the eyes. So just to give you different perspectives, I think that's important because, I don't know, it adds to the case in my opinion. But there are so many different causes. I just wanted to point it out. Let's go on.
Did you make any observations regarding Mr. O'Keefe's hand or hands?
Yes. On his upper right arm, I noted that he had a superficial abrasion. So it would have been,
Her pointer's not
you
working.
can
Can we move that down a little bit?
move it
please?
down a little bit. Yeah, thank you. Doesn't seem to be doing a very good job. Okay.
Could be.
Somehow doesn't want to
Sorry
work.
if that's not working well.
It's projecting here, but not on the actual picture.
Okay. There may be a second pointer.
I can do it here.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So on the right upper medial arm, that would be the inner side of his arm, there was a superficial abrasion. Again, that's a scrape. Then on his right posterior arm and forearm, so not exactly on this aspect of the arm, but on the back side of the arm, which would be in the back of the diagram, there were multiple abrasions, which I described as ranging from 2 to 3 millimeters and up to 7 centimeters. Then, yeah, if you could move the diagram down, please. Again, there is a back to this diagram. I don't know if you could put that on the screen. There we go. So this is now the right side, and this is the left. I noted that there were 2 bruises on the back of his right hand, also a faint scratch on the back of his left hand, and then moving down to the lower extremities or the legs. If you could please show the front. There was a small abrasion, a small scrape on the side of his right knee.
She also saw rib fractures to the 4th and 5th ribs, right and left. However, she believed that those were from CPR. So I wanted to point that out before someone was like, wait a minute, weren't his ribs broken? So the superficial cuts she's talking about are the ones that we've been seeing over and over again in the news and probably in trial last time. Those are the ones that look like claws or dog bites or what people have been saying look like that. She calls them superficial. They range in different sizes. Those confuse me the most. They really do. They just confuse me. I don't really understand how he got them. I've been theorizing how Courtney and I've been theorizing how we're at a loss. I cannot figure it out. In any theory that I think of, I'm like, oh, that's what's bothering me. I think last night, Courtney, or was it this morning, you were like, what if another animal got, you know how animals are attracted to the smell of blood? How do we know after the fact when he was lying there? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Now, briefly, I might want to skip over a couple of things so that I have more time to discuss like more important things. We're going to quickly talk about, um, actually, I don't think I need to play this part. It's the toxicology. There were no prescription drugs. Blood alcohol level was 0.21, I believe, and that was called significant. I looked it up because I wanted to know, and it said an individual could experience things like slurred speech, coordination could be off. Um, they could have nausea, vomiting. Think, okay, I've had a good amount to drink. That's the way I would put it. But I think this next part is important, so we'll play that. Let me just make sure I'm at the right timestamp. Is it this one? Yes, it's this one.
After your autopsy and observations of Mr. O'Keefe's body, inevitably did you come to a conclusion about the manner and cause of Mr. O'Keefe's death? And I'll ask you first about the cause. To a reasonable degree of medical certainty, did you reach a conclusion about the cause of Mr. O'Keefe's death?
Yes, the cause of death was determined to be blunt impact injuries of head and hypothermia.
You mentioned 2 different things, blunt impact and hypothermia. Was
Correct.
there a primary cause of death in your opinion?
The blunt impact injuries of head.
Hypothermia, was that sufficient to be a primary cause of death, in your opinion?
In the absence of head trauma, hypothermia is a cause of death, but I'm not able to make that determination in this case because we do have the blunt impact injuries of head.
That could have been confusing, but to simplify it, let's say he didn't present with any injuries to his head, but he was lying in the snow. That's where they found him. So they would make notes, found in the snow. And then his temperature, which was 80.1 degrees Fahrenheit, that would be hypothermia. So if it was just him in the snow, didn't live, and his temperature was there, they would conclude that's the primary cause because it can be a cause of death. But the fact that there were blunt force trauma to the head, hypothermia was only a contributing factor, but not the primary cause. Now, I'm just reiterating things for all of us to remember. The Commonwealth, oh my gosh, my daughter's calling me right now. And you guys probably can't hear it from here. Last time I was like, sorry about my phone. Nobody heard it. She has the flu right now. I'll tell John to call her back. I'll text him while I'm on here. Okay. So I forgot what I was saying. See, so when the hypothermia, okay, the Commonwealth wants the hypothermia because remember, they're arguing that he's been out there all night since Karen left, right? But the defense is saying, no, he was inside the house and he was moved out there later. So just keep that in mind because you might hear that a couple more times. But that was the secondary cause. And then I wondered how long, and someone can look this up, I guess, how long does a body have to be out there to drop in temperature as much as he did? But now let's go to the manner of death.
Or even at the end when you drew your conclusions, were you able to reach a conclusion as to the manner of Mr. O'Keefe's death to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
No, I was not.
After you complete your findings, including the manner of death and the cause of death, even if undetermined, are you required by statute, by law, to file a report or a document?
Yes,
And what is that document?
it's the death certificate.
Did you do so in this case?
Yes.
When you file a death certificate, do you include your ultimate conclusions regarding cause and manner of death?
Yes, there is a death certificate that is issued immediately after the autopsy. The death certificate is a document that is necessary for the family in order to make funeral arrangements and proceed with their plans. So a death certificate is always issued at the end of the autopsy. If the cause and manner of death are known at that point, they are stated on the death certificate. If they are not, or if we need to do additional studies, then both the cause and the manner are listed as pending. And that death certificate is sufficient for the family to make arrangements. Later, as we get more information, as we get more results from our studies back, we issue an amended death certificate. So that amended death certificate will have a cause and a manner.
So funny you would ask about this because I wanted to show you how proud I am that I've actually graduated from this class at my school. Now, mind you, I took this one in 2021. So it has been a while. I can only take one class every month. So, or not every month, every couple months. It's been taking me a while. But yes, manner and cause are two different things. So it would be like gunshot wound, gunshot to the head that caused his death. But how? Was it suicide? Was it homicide? Was it accidental? That would be the manner. So there's always going to be two. And then I'm not even going to confuse you with all the legal aspects of it because then there's legal definitions of things as well that will qualify for different investigative processes. But there you have it. She could not determine the manner of death. Her final death certificate listed the cause as blunt head trauma and hypothermia, with the manner undetermined. So the initial death certificate was issued with pending, and then a final amended certificate was issued in April. It was like April 14th of 2022. She had 90 days from the time of the initial report to amend that death certificate. And this usually happens because more information is obtained because in these cases, when police are involved, and death investigators are involved, they're going to provide input. And then the doctor can make appropriate changes. Because if there are additional findings and it makes sense to her and she feels it will contribute to her understanding of what happened, she will amend it. But in this case, Proctor had a theory. Karen hit John with her SUV. And Proctor provided this theory to the doctor. But apparently, it didn't change her determination. Or I should say, her undetermined manner of death. So on cross, we find out about that theory that Proctor set forth when Alessi questions the doctor. So let's listen to that, because I also thought that was interesting.
Yes.
Are you familiar with a person named Michael Proctor? Is that name familiar to you?
Yes, it is.
And at one time, Michael Proctor was a trooper, correct?
Correct.
And so did former Trooper Proctor inform you of the working law enforcement theory at the time of the investigation of this matter, namely his working theory, a collision of a motor vehicle with a pedestrian? Did he inform you of that?
He informed our office of that, yes.
He informed your office. And is it fair to say that he informed your office or provided that information to your office in or about February of 2022?
That information, part of that information was provided to our office at the time of the autopsy. One of the pieces of information that had come in, and there were multiple sources calling into our office providing information, was that this was a possible person struck by a motor vehicle.
And the time of the autopsy, if I have it correctly, was that around the end of January of 2022?
The autopsy was January 31st.
The only reason I'm not getting to your comments this time is I'm trying to be fast. But Interspace 11 said, I would have thought that the cold would have preserved him longer with the wounds and the swelling. Good point. It is interesting. And then somebody said, Cuff, you said, I think it was like that in the Kaylee Anthony case as well. Ooh, what are you talking about? Because I was following that case very closely. Interesting, right? So let's see. I feel like the police offered this theory, and let's get more into it before I say this next thing.
Your Honor, if I could, with your permission, please publish a photograph which Your Honor has and the parties have stipulated, or that's in evidence. And this is the one. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I show that to the witness?
Okay.
When you're looking at this photo, I noticed something in the corner. I mean, everyone's probably noticed it, but I wanted to point it out in case not. You're going to see a photo. There's going to be two men in the photo. They're in the morgue. But remember, we heard testimony from Keefe. I think his name was Keefe, Officer Keefe, Trooper Keefe. And he said he was the only one at the autopsy. I remember that clear as day. He said he was the only one. Look at the label in the left corner.
All right, so we will mark this as the next exhibit. There's no objections to Brendan?
No objection.
Okay, so we'll mark it first and then you can display it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I hope I got the right photo.
Thank you.
Is that the right photo?
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Squirty-Bello, if I could hand that to you, please. You could take a look at it, and when you've had a fair opportunity to look at it, you can just look back up, and I'll proceed at that time.
Yes, I recognize the picture. Well, I've never seen this picture before, but I know what it's depicting.
Thank you. What is depicted in that picture?
It's a picture of two individuals setting, which looks very similar to our morgue at the Cape Cod office.
She's so
Very
cute.
good.
She
If
like
you could
doesn't
just
want to
hold that
say
for a
it.
moment, and with the court's permission, could
She's like, it looks like our morgue. It's like, it's your morgue.
I publish that for the jury?
Okay?
Thank you. Mr. Wolf? And if you could please zoom in on the two individuals in that picture.
Look at the label.
Dr.
Can you read the label?
Scorti-Bello, do you recognize any of the individuals in that picture?
To be perfectly honest, no, I don't.
With regard to the person on the right, do you recognize that person?
No, I don't.
Apparently, and this is what I was going to point out because somebody already pointed out, it says Proctor. It says Keefe Proctor. And then I was reading today and somebody said in the comments that they addressed it and it wasn't Proctor. My point. It's all over the place. They see a guy with no hair and it's always Proctor. Just letting you know.
And you said you recognize the setting, correct?
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily think Alessi was using this picture for that reason. I was just pointing it out because I wanted to make the other point that it's mislabeled, or like, was that a sly move? I don't know. Maybe they really did think it was Proctor. Why I think this is important is not because who was there. I just wanted to point that out. Why this is important is because officers are allowed to attend autopsies. They are allowed. It's important for them to. They should be doing that. In all the cases I talk about on my other channel, there's somebody there talking about what was found at the autopsy, looking closely, going back to the office, talking to other officers, saying, okay, I have a theory. They always have to start with a theory. That's how they solve cases. It's okay that they're there. They should be there. But this just goes to the whole point that they kept offering their theory. It wasn't once, it wasn't twice. They were calling her office, offering their theory, but it's not wrong to do that either. I just thought it was interesting.
Yes.
And if I heard you correctly, you said this is the Cape Cod facility?
I don't think we need to hear that part. Let's go to this part.
Dr. Scorti-Bello, do you recognize any of the individuals in that picture?
To be perfectly honest, no, I don't.
With regard to the person on the right, do you recognize that person?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I think he was probably trying to insinuate there. I was trying to get to this one. I apologize.
What's depicted in this picture are two individuals. For two individuals to be present, is there a protocol that they had to follow to be present for that? Like a sign-in or an authorization?
Yes, there is a sign-in sheet that individuals have to put their name and their shield number.
And this is important because I actually feel like this is a good thing that they have to put their shield number and have to make sure that they're legit and they can't just walk into the morgue. I don't know. I feel like that really went towards the investigation being good in that little part, like check mark at least. Okay. So I'm going fast only for the reason I want to get to some of the things that I think are more important. I believe this next clip is a little long, but bear with me because I feel like this is the most important clip. There's like two that are really important. So let's listen to it and then I'll answer questions and talk to you about it.
Now, we were speaking about former Trooper Proctor. Do you recall former Trooper Proctor sending you a copy of scene photographs and wanting
Hold
to
on.
schedule a phone call with you? So
Hold on. I messed something up. I want you to be able to see this correctly. What in the world? Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on with my screen. There we go. My apologies. Oh my goodness. I'll have to edit this out later. Who can watch my screen like that? Oh, and I still can't fix it. I'll figure it out.
that he could explain the status of his investigation. You recall that?
Yes.
And that occurred approximately in March of 2022?
Yes, approximately.
Right. And the method of communication of that was that by email, to the best of your recollection?
I requested that our medical legal investigator, we have our own investigators at the office that are responsible for obtaining medical records and sometimes being the liaison between us and law enforcement to get reports, I requested that she contact whoever was in charge of the investigation and set up a meeting, a phone call. So since it had already been a few weeks since the autopsy, I wanted to make sure that if there was any additional information that could be provided to me, I could take it into account, because I had 90 days to issue a report and a death certificate on this case.
Now, you've mentioned the 90 days on direct. You just mentioned it now. Is the 90 days a hard and fast rule, or is it just something you aspire to as a matter of good practices?
It's not a hard and fast rule. It's something that as an office we try to achieve. Again, the reason being that there are family members, next of kin, that are waiting for these reports and these death certificates for various reasons. So is it possible to go over the 90 days? Absolutely, if necessary. But we do try to finish our part in those 90 days.
So it's possible to go past the 90 days, but there would, given the considerations you just articulated, there'd have to be a pretty good reason why you'd want to do that, right?
Correct.
And in this situation, you concluded that you had sufficient information on the medical side and the legal side to come to the conclusions that you needed to come to. Is that fair?
Well, I had sufficient information on the medical side because I did the autopsy and I had those findings. I did not have sufficient information that pointed to one manner of death over another manner of death, and therefore I stated that the manner of death was undetermined.
Exactly. So the manner of death is undetermined, and I want to, if I could with you, pursue that a little bit in a moment. But when you came toward the end of that 90-day period, you had information from the law enforcement side on their theory of what had happened, correct?
Correct.
I'll let that one stand.
You had performed all of the medical investigation and analysis that you needed to perform, is that correct?
Yes.
There wasn't something more that you wanted to do on the medical side. You had mentioned, to be fair, you had Dr. Stonebridge involved as well. You had what you needed on that side, correct?
Yes.
Sorry, I just cut her off for a second. This was interesting. So again, defense pointing out, former Trooper Proctor set forth a theory and she did not change her medical opinion. That's all I was trying to point out. I just wanted to listen all the way through. I forget to put it to 1.25. I had it on 1.25 last time and it went by so much better because he kind of talks slower. But I think he does that for the jury because it's a lot of information. So the next issue he went through was the hypothermia. And I feel like we should skip this part to get to better parts of it because I think we all kind of understand that. The defense's theory, John went into the house. Something happened to him. He was thrown outside later. So he kept pressing the doctor on other reasons why John's temperature could be 80 degrees. But other than sepsis, she could not provide any other reason. So I didn't really think that was relevant here. And it wasn't going his way. He tried all these hypotheticals. I don't know if you were watching this trial, but to me, it was more confusing than it was clarifying. So I just don't think it really worked for him. But then he goes into how severe the injury to John's head was. I think we can probably listen to that one.
The head.
So blunt impact injuries of the head. Is it fair to say that that was a very severe injury?
It was a severe injury, correct.
And would Mr. O'Keefe had been rendered unconscious nearly instantaneously with death following shortly thereafter?
It's very possible, yes.
Is it more than possible? Is it probable that that's what would have occurred?
I can't tell you how quickly he would have been rendered unconscious, but at some point after that injury, yes, he would have been rendered unconscious.
Is it possible he could have been rendered unconscious immediately?
So she's answered it this way. I think you need
Another person for that. Let's move on from that, Mr. Lett.
So he wasn't able to really get that question answered, but she said possibly, right? I think that's good enough saying possibly. Then he asked about grass and debris being present because the theory of the Commonwealth is that he was in the grass and he fell in the grass and there was grass below the snow. We heard that last time. There was no grass or dirt found on John's head when she examined him. So I thought that was interesting. But the most important part, or the most interesting part to me, don't come for me just for talking about weird things I saw. It was this next part. And I do have something for you to see that I made. It's nothing that big. This was about patterned injury. Did you guys see this last time? This was weird. So there's a pattern on John's scalp. I did not see this last time. Maybe I never looked hard enough. I don't know if they ever showed this before. With the wound on his head, I told you it looks like a cut, right? So there's the cut. And then above the cut, there's redness. I'm not going to show his whole head, so don't think I'm going to do that. But I did cut a portion of the picture out, and I'm going to show you something in just a moment. Let's listen to this first.
Do you see any evidence of grass in this depiction?
No, I do not.
Did you recall ever seeing any evidence of grass when you were performing the autopsy?
I did not see evidence of grass.
That was that grass one. Here's this one.
With your Honor's permission, I would like to publish Exhibit 160.
Yes.
Thank you.
They are not going to show you this. This is John's wound. Just listen to what she's saying, and then I am going to show you a very redacted picture of just this pattern, and then we'll talk about it.
Dr. Scorti-Bello, if you could please draw your attention to what is depicted on both screens. Pick whatever screen is most convenient for you. And what I want to do is to go over what is depicted there, and I'd like to start with just some basics. What is that white rectangle that is on the photograph?
This?
Yes.
That's a ruler.
And what's the purpose of the ruler?
To show a scale. When I measure the injury, I use the ruler to document that.
And if you could please draw your further attention to what I will refer to, and you use your own term, but just to start it, the horizontal line that is appears to be a laceration. You know what I'm referring to?
This, yes, this is a laceration.
So right now you can kind of visualize this. There's a ruler underneath showing how big the laceration is for her purposes. The laceration's there. That's where we're looking at this point.
Right, so it's fair to say that that's a laceration.
Correct.
And just so we get all that's depicted on this, you referred to earlier up above that, the red area. Is that an abrasion?
Yes.
And do you also denote to the left almost like a J-type item going vertically up? Yes, and going up. Do you see that?
A J.
Yeah, that I did not note that specifically. I just noted the whole injury as part of the abrasion.
That's my point. So you didn't make a separate note of what appears to be a J, and it might be easier to see it in the screen over there. It's your...
Okay. Not going to be showing his full autopsy photo. I have redacted most of it. But I had to see this, and I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Y'all. This is his head. This is the shaved portion. You're only seeing a little bit to the right. And I know this is very blurry because, like I said, I had to, these aren't, this photography is not very good. Can you see the J? Let me show you what I made here. I made this just to give you a reference point, and then I'll go back to this. So reference point, J. This is what he's talking about. Okay. Picture, wound. Wound is down here. You can kind of see a little edge of it on the bottom. The bottom right corner is a little bit of the laceration. The portion above is an abrasion from whatever it is, scraping. It could be portion of where he got hit. And then there's this, what he's calling a pattern. I looked at it, I looked at it, I looked at it, full blown with everything in all of its glory, not glory, I don't know. I looked at it full so that I could see everything. And it was weird to me. It was weird to me. There was a definite, what I would call more of like a hook. I don't know if I would call it a J, but it does look like a J. And if you kind of zoom it out, you can almost see it better. See that? Okay. I hope I'm not being crazy when I'm showing you this. But here's my point. This was interesting because it is a patterned injury. That's what they call it when there's a, you can see something that looks like it came from somewhere else, right? Because it's almost like an indentation. It's like when you fall on something, you fall asleep on something. So when I looked at it, I was like, is he trying to say, don't come for me on this. This was just me thinking. I was like, wait a minute. Is he trying to say J like from Higgins' Jeep? But no, because I looked and I was like, it's only about a half a centimeter wide. So I'm like, where could that have come from? Where could that have come from? I don't know. And she didn't note it. And I guess she didn't notice it or it wasn't significant enough. So it's too small for it to be. But then I was like, could it be someone's ring? Then I was like, you would have to wear it the other way. It's a J. Does anyone have a J? My mind was just boggled. But this is a good defense strategy. I'm just calling it like I see it. I don't know what he's alluding to. It confused me. You let me know what you think. But when we move on, I don't think that Alessi was expecting this next answer. But hang on, I don't think she's done.
Your conclusion, but is it more, is it easier to see there?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, and so you didn't make a separate note as to what that was in your report, correct?
No, I did not.
Do you consider that an abrasion or something else?
I believe that's still an abrasion.
Do you conclude that that J is different in any manner from the abrasion that you've noted above the laceration?
It does look different.
I believe it could be part of the whole abrasion, or it could be something different.
Could be something different.
Fair enough.
So that was my point in playing that is that, again, reasonable doubt, right? Because you're like, how did that get there? The jury is definitely thinking that because we're thinking, and it's okay to think about these things and be like, what's going on? All right. I don't think he was expecting this next answer, and we only have a few more, and I'm at 7:03. So let's go to this one.
Would a fall backwards on a flat frozen ground produce a circular and not a linear abrasion as depicted here on the back of an injured person's head?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Assume a fall backwards on a flat frozen ground. Would such a fall in impact present that type of pattern, or would it present a circular pattern, perhaps with something like a starfish in the middle?
Starfish?
I'll
Alessi.
allow that. Can you answer that?
I can say that a fall backwards could very well produce that injury.
My question is more specific, and that is a fall backwards where the person impacts the back of their head on flat, frozen ground. Would you expect that type of a laceration from that type of a fall? Not just a general fall backwards, but specifically a fall backwards where the back of the head hits flat, frozen ground. Would you expect that?
I could, yes.
And under what circumstances could a laceration like that and an abrasion, all of it together, what circumstances could cause that type from a fall backwards on flat, frozen ground?
Well, the laceration is due to the blunt impact, and so is the abrasion. The abrasion is friction. So depending on the type of surface, you mentioned flat, frozen ground, it's quite possible to have an injury as the one depicted.
I don't think Alessi was expecting that. So again, this is the flip-flop, you're kind of listening, you're like, "Oh, interesting." So it could very well have been from a fall backwards. Not to mean that it happened that way, not to say it was a car accident, could have been a fall. I mean, it could have been anything, right? But she's saying it's consistent. But then there was something else. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting what the next one is. I have to listen to it first.
Would a fall backwards on a flat, frozen ground produce?
I think we just did that one. Hang on.
And a fall on someone's, on the back of the head with a blunt surface.
Is there, are you familiar with the phrase?
Focused chest compression device for an extended period of time. I think it was like almost 40 minutes. It was like 37 minutes of continuous CPR. And he wondered if that could have explained the hemorrhages. These are just reasonable doubt, right? And yeah, sorry about the pause. I didn't mean to pause her on that. Oh my goodness. Please don't think I do that on purpose. That's mean. I don't like when I do that. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to do this. Let's see. I think we went over. Oh, I think I did want to play this. Hang on.
You did not include in your autopsy in any fashion any discussion of whether Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a motor vehicle accident, did you?
No, I did not.
In fact, there were no injuries consistent with a motor vehicle impact on Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Sustained.
Did you evaluate it all in your autopsy whether Mr. O'Keefe had any injuries consistent with a motor vehicle accident?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Yes, I did examine his lower extremities. That is protocol in any case of suspected impact with a motor vehicle. So I did examine his legs, and I did not see any evidence of an impact site.
We talked about that in the first video, I think. There was no impact site, which you usually find, which you should be able to find when you've been hit by a vehicle, which I told you I had on me when I got hit. I wasn't badly hit, but Brennan comes back. Now you tell me, because this was the part where I really think this backfired. I really think it backfired on him. It's a little long, but it's one of our last ones. So let's discuss after this, and then I'll have a few minutes to go through some questions. This is Brennan.
I'd like to turn to, please.
No. Is that not Brennan? Hold on. Nope, that's not Brennan. Hold up. I was like, that sounds like Alessi. Here we go.
At the time
I'm all over the place tonight. I'm telling you, I'm not feeling well.
of your death certificate that you filed, were you informed that a Jennifer McCabe had reported that the defendant said, did I hit him or could I have hit him multiple times?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
I don't believe I knew about Miss McCabe.
Did you learn that Ms. McCabe reported later that the defendant, while speaking to first responders,
Hang on.
reported that she had hit?
I feel like there was. I'm sorry. I feel like there's a part we missed, and it's too important not to get there.
The legal aspect. Do you remember those questions?
Start it.
You submitted the death certificate on April 14th.
Correct.
I want to talk about some of the things that you may or may not have known about or considered at the time you wrote your death certificate or filed your death certificate.
This is the part.
Were you informed or were you aware that before you filed your death certificate, there was information in the investigation that police spoke to a first responder by the name of Timothy Nuttall, who reported that the defendant
I'm going to allow it.
that the defendant said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Were you aware of that
I became aware of it at some point.
during your 90-day window?
I believe so.
Were you aware that there was another first responder by the name of McLaughlin who provided information that the defendant said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him?
Yes.
Were you aware of statements made by the defendant, to Miss McCabe that she said, may have I hit him? Did I hit him?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach, please?
That was the objection. Okay. Then they come back. Sorry about that.
Coming in for the truth of what's in the statements. It's coming in so that
Is YouTube doing a thing right now? Because I'm plugged totally in. Man, this is the best part because it's so important. Try to restart and let me know if it's totally messed up.
as it goes to Dr. Scortivello's knowledge and state of mind at the time of her report.
Thank you. At the time of your death certificate that you filed, were you informed that a Jennifer McCabe had reported that the defendant said, did I hit him or could I have hit him multiple times?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
I don't believe I knew about Miss McCabe.
Did you learn that Ms. McCabe reported later that the defendant, while speaking to first responders, reported that she had hit him? Did you know that?
I was aware of that information later on.
Were you aware of the investigation regarding alcohol consumption?
Yes.
Were you aware that the police or Massachusetts State Police spoke to other witnesses about their observations that night?
About their,
Their observations?
yes.
Were you aware of an interview by Trooper Buchanan with firefighter Daniel Whitley on February 7, 2022?
I don't remember.
Were you aware that Mr. Whitley told the police that the defendant had expressed that she had gotten into an argument with the defendant that night?
That was part of the information I was given, yes.
Were you aware of a report from first responder Anthony Flamate about statements made by the defendant to him?
I don't recall that particular first responder, no.
Were you aware of statements provided by Kerry Roberts to the police that the defendant had called her, citing Kerry John is dead,
Yeah, I was given that information.
and the questions of did I hit him? Were you aware of that?
Yes.
Were you aware of information that troopers had an opportunity to go and speak to the defendant?
Yes.
Were you aware of the statements that she made to the troopers?
Not in detail.
Were you aware that when they spoke to her on January 29th, she informed that she had a broken taillight on her vehicle but did not know how it happened?
Objection, Your Honors.
I'll allow that.
Yes,
I don't know if the audio is being weird tonight. I don't know, but that was the last one I had for you. And all it was, and I hope, let me know if I'm still on and my audio is working because I could just explain the point of me showing you that last one. And I'm hoping that you can hear me because if I was going to go through questions, what's the point if you can't hear me? I think this backfired on him. You tell me. But I think he was expecting her to say between the 90 days, she didn't know about I think I hit him, I might have hit him, I hit him, the phone calls, all the things that she's like, yes, I was aware of the arguments. Yes, I was aware of the EMT saying that. Yes, I was aware that there was, she kept saying, yes, she was. I think he was expecting her to say no, because towards the end, he's like, were you aware of her interviews on documentaries? She was like, "No, I wasn't aware of that." But would that have changed her medical opinion? I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have. But that's kind of all I wanted to go over tonight, and I'm not feeling good. I feel very tired, unfortunately. Today I feel like I just had a day. I had a day. I had to go to an event and it took so much out of me to go in public. To be social and go in public and do everything we did today, it took a lot out of me. But I definitely wanted to highlight um, some of the comments actually, other than it keeps freezing. Gina Ramirez asked, so we know the cause of death, but not the manner of death. Well, technically, undetermined is a manner of death, even though it's not, what you want to hear. But she just doesn't have enough information to conclude what happened to him. She knows what caused his death, but in what way, she can't tell. So there's just not enough. There was no ring camera, there was no witnesses. It's really hard when you're only working with what we all know, right? Everything that's come out so far. So it's really, really hard. And the difference between an abrasion and a laceration looks more like a cut. So you're going to have that border on the outside, and the inside, it's going to be more deep. And then abrasion I have an abrasion on me right now. You probably can't see it. Can't see it. Abrasion is like if you scraped your hand against something and there's sort of a scrape mark, but it doesn't really go in. So those are the differences. And he has both of those on the back of his head. He has a laceration, and then above it, he has abrasion. I don't know why it was freezing and doing weird stuff tonight. I'm so sorry. I feel like I should go because it's glitchy. But I do want to say I'm so happy you're here with me tonight. I really hope that on the replay, maybe it fixes itself. I've seen that happen before. Brandy said she knows everything and he still wasn't hit by a car. Her determination was that, in her medical opinion, she did not see injuries consistent with him being hit by a motor vehicle. That was her medical opinion, and a lot of people, that's it for them. They hear that and they're like, you know what, pathologist, this is her job. She knows what she's talking about. She doesn't see the impact marks. And they conclude, she wasn't it. It's interesting. Everyone's going to have a different opinion, right? But you're right. With a medical opinion, I think it's stronger than us trying to reconstruct it. But like someone else said, I am very excited to hear the accident reconstruction again, the crash daddies, if you will. But I want to say I'm sorry for ending a little early tonight. I am feeling not so good. So I do want to still say thank you so much for being here. It's helping me so much. I'm sorry I had so many problems tonight, but I hope to catch you in my very next live. So I'll see you in my next one. Bye. See you later.